So I see you reposted that VR piece that you did for Areo, a
Mhm.
new decadent movement that will be spurred along by compelling VR. You
Mhm.
want to talk about that? Cool.
Yeah, so I had this idea for this article when I was, and this is all part of the article, but when I was kind of reflecting upon this old French novel called Against Nature by this author Huysmans, and he kind of kicked off the
Oh,
decadent movement. And
okay.
the concept of decadence is it's really interesting because like if something is decadent, like I don't know about you, but like in my mind, I picture like a frilly French pastry that just has a lot going on with it, and you're like, oh, that's decadent. You know, I just want to
Yeah.
sink my teeth into this decadent pastry. So it has like this good connotation, but you know, if you look up the term decadent, it's kind of synonymous with the fall of society because people become too self-indulged or something like this. So it's kind of like this
Yeah.
really negative connotation. And, you know, so that makes it a really interesting term just to write about as a jumping off point for an article about modern society. And so, I mean, it just mapped perfectly onto this idea of abandoning reality for living in a virtual space. And so there was this guy, Jack Wilmot, who lived in virtual reality for a week. He had like the headset on and he showered in it. Like he had a contraption so he could shower. He would eat in the thing. Like he literally lived 24 hours a
Yeah.
day in a virtual reality headset. And that is like the pinnacle of decadence. So that old French novel that Huysmans wrote, um, it's about just experiencing artificiality. He lists how to have a good life, and it's like smelling perfume. You don't need flowers, smell perfume, or you don't need flowers at all. Like fill your apartment with plastic flowers. Plastic flowers, he said, are the pinnacle of art. So
Yeah.
like this artificiality thing is just like a concept that did become popularized through this novel and through because of other authors like Oscar Wilde and people like this who really started to run with this. And the modern idea is people who like want to ditch the online world and just live an analog lifestyle. They're like anti-decadent. They just want like the real life experience. Whereas someone like Jack Wilmot, who wants to live just in a virtual artificial space, that's like decadence. And so right now, as virtual reality becomes more prominent, we're just gonna like kind of wait and see. Like, does modern society become more decadent in the sense of becoming more and more virtual, more and more artificial, or do we kind of fight against that and become more analog? And it's gonna, especially with like the new generation, the people like the Gen Z folks, they might not even see a difference between VR life and analog life at some level. I mean, it's gonna be pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I would think that if you're sort of a trad type, you would be, I would think a little bit thrown off by the fact that so much of what was once considered decadent is now just par for the course in everyday life. And in
Right.
fact, this VR thing, this VR life, that's decadent. But that's decadent because so far we associate it with like rich boys and their toys, right? But you know,
Right.
cable, Netflix and a Domino's pizza is decadent, but it's also common. So it doesn't have quite the same stigma. You know. But I don't. I mean, it's funny. That article feels like it could have been written, or would have been somewhat more impactful. That word during coronavirus, right?
True.
Retreating VR. Unfortunately, we're not far enough along with VR yet for that to be a compelling way to kill time during coronavirus. There's a small number of people, yeah, higher income so far who can do it. I know, like, there's roughly $200 version of the Oculus, or maybe the Oculus is the $200 version. Anyway, so okay, it's about as expensive as a console, I guess, a new console of some kind. Um, but yeah, it hasn't really penetrated too far into our consciousness as a way of uh, dealing with being indoors and sort of cut off from folks during coronavirus.
Right. I mean, I do think that it's going to be very interesting to see. I mean, I have a young niece who's 7, and she is, I mean, just it's amazing how naturally she takes up anything involving a screen on a phone. And that's her at 7. Maybe a decade from now, it might not be a screen on a phone. It might be, glasses with augmented reality or straight up virtual reality that when the parents want to ignore their kid for 20 minutes, they might be popping into a headset. That's like pretty easy to imagine. And if you're 7 years old, just like hopping into VR whenever your mom wants to take a break from parenting, you're gonna have a different, like literally different view of what reality is. And I mean, that's like, to me, that's exciting, because we've done everything else. We've done analog life in all of its iterations for thousands of years. This is actually kind of a new space where we're kind of like, maybe actually de-emphasizing the importance of the meat suit, the human body, and instead emphasizing just like cognition, just like pure,
Yeah.
brain shit.
My my instincts are sort of more conservative than that. I feel like it's bad going in that direction, but then I also have to wrestle with the I guess type 2 thinking, wherein the things I enjoy now were once thought to be society wrecking, right?
Right.
So if unless it comes so fast and so swiftly, that a lot of people who wouldn't consider themselves traditionalists are concerned about it. I wonder how compelling that really is, like kind of a generalized nostalgic or traditionalist argument,
Right. I mean, I think that's a really good point that I mean, we already do live in a very artificial reality. And this is something that, uh, well, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy who, Baudrillard, the guy who wrote Simulation and Simulacra, he
Yeah.
talks about how, like, if you think about like Los Angeles, like, okay, let go to Disneyland in LA County, right? And I think it's in LA
Right.
County, Anaheim. And I guess you're in Disneyland,
Oh,
and it's like a fake city. And but then, like, with like fake roads and fake houses and fake everything, when you step outside, you're no longer in Disneyland. You're in this thing called Los Angeles. And like that's a fake thing too. Like they're kind of fake streets. It's like a street that's an idea of a street that is all like that we created thousands of years ago, and we're still like kind of iterating upon this thing called the street. And all of reality is basically just that. We're creating a reality inside of a reality inside of a reality, all just based upon these notions of what a street through a forest used to be like. Right, a path that you would walk down, and now it's like
the
a freeway.
the only genuine street is some sort of beaten path through a forest, and then we've just been indulging in simulacra ever since, right?
And we just take this for granted. Everything that is in the world, like none of it is not touched by the human mind to have been molded in
Yeah.
some fashion based on some vaguely artistic person's vision for how reality could be rather than how it is.